Okay, good morning. And first, thank you to our host, PTC, and to John Atkin for putting this very important topic on the agenda today. So welcome, everyone, to our discussion on the importance of sustainability across the digital infrastructure space. I'm thrilled to be here today. Jen Weitzel from GLP, leading our data center initiative globally. And our team believes that sustainability and being additive to the infrastructure from which we draw and the communities in which we operate is a cornerstone of delivering IT capacity. I'm thrilled to introduce the panelists that we have today. I think we have a very diverse set of perspectives and vantage points across the ecosystem. And I'll start with Joe Kava, who leads digital infrastructure at Google, who has been one of the leaders in investing in renewable power and also setting aggressive sustainability and carbon targets. Jennifer Ruch from Oracle and formerly Equinix, who has developed and deployed and implemented ESG programs for both of those organizations. John Atkins, who is a managing director at RBC, focused on the digital infrastructure part of the sector. And then finally, Joley Michaelson, who is the founder and CEO of Sun Company, and also brings an interesting perspective on the tipping points of adoption of new technology from even her previous experience at Tesla. And her current company is focused on on-site renewables and battery storage. So before we get started, just a little bit of context setting. I think we can all agree that our sector is experiencing some unprecedented growth. And with that creates a platform where initiatives focused on sustainability can have a very high impact based on the volume that we're doing. I'd like to believe that our sector is ahead of even other sectors in thinking about the impacts of sustainability, but there's much more to do. So from power utilization, increasing the mix of renewable power, water utilization, and understanding and gaining transparency across the carbon in our supply chains and the full life cycle of our assets. A couple of numbers to ground us. The International Energy Agency refers to our sector, which is data centers and data transmission, as consuming 3% of the world's electricity use. In addition to that, 1% of greenhouse gas emissions. And I know that there are many lobbyists that are focused on shaping some recent legislation. So a shout out to the EU Data Center Advisory, and then also driving transparency so that we can understand the impacts and address them. And I would refer to the iMasons Climate Accord as an example. So with that, I will hand over to the panelists to share a little bit about their background and also why sustainability is important to them, their organizations, the sector, and society. And I'll start with Joe.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joe Kava. I am responsible for all the teams that basically do site selection, energy procurement, design, build, and operations for all of our data centers worldwide. I've been at Google for 15 years. I've been passionate about sustainability, primarily started with the power sector. Even before joining Google, I felt that there was a lot of opportunity for the industry to take a leadership role, going back all the way to the days of the green grid when PUE first started, because I just didn't want to see regulators get involved and mandate what we had to do. I thought the industry could lead the way, and I think we've been hugely successful in that front. But power is just one of the pillars of sustainability. From the Google perspective, our three main pillars are energy, water, and circular economy. And we can talk a little bit more about that as we go on, but we've made public commitments in each of those pillars, and that kind of really drives a lot of our decision making, our investment, and our kind of location strategy specifically.
Fabulous. Over to Jennifer. We'll just work our way.
Perfect.
Yes.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Ruch. I am the Director of Sustainability for Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, which is the business unit within Oracle Corporation that's really driving the adoption of cloud into Oracle's business model across both our on-prem clients as well as going after enterprises and other government regions and such. I'm new to Oracle. I've been at Oracle since September. However, I have 10 years of experience in the data center sector working at Equinix, where I started on the energy procurement side, similar to Joe, and moved over and really scaled Equinix's ESG, environment, social, and governance strategy across the major topics for data centers, helping Equinix set a science-based target, a 100% renewable goal, make really large purchases on renewable energy, as well as issue things like green bonds to help drive more attention to green topics for the company. But really my mission at Oracle is to help OCI, Oracle Cloud, reach 100% renewable energy across our global platform, net zero by 2050, and then our third pillar, which I'm less engaged with, is also circular economy as well, and recycling of servers and such. But really excited to be here to talk about digital infrastructure.
Thanks. So I'm John Atkin. I work at RBC Capital Markets. I'm based in San Francisco, and I head up the investment research effort in communications infrastructure. So that would be things like mobile infrastructure, fiber, data centers. Data centers are by far the most environmentally kind of intensive or impactful sector. And I do a lot of work examining the practices of companies like the big users such as Oracle, Microsoft, Amazon, and so forth, as well as the large developers such as Digital Realty and Equinix, both private and public. The reason it's important is that investors in these companies, both public and private, increasingly place a premium on environmental stewardship and greenhouse gas emissions, renewable energy mix, and so forth. So do a lot of detailed work in that area, and maybe just to level set a little bit to amplify what Jen Weitzel said, 3% of grid usage, but in certain countries like the Netherlands and Ireland and Singapore that are essentially export economies where the bits that are generated there serve a regional need, you'll see that the electricity draw is actually far greater than 3%. And so it's maybe not a surprise that you see some of the moratoria that have been talked about in those economies ahead of what you see in larger countries.
I'm Joley Michaelson, the CEO of the Sun Company. I started the Sun Company in 2017 with the mission to optimize and democratize energy through the acceleration of the mass adoption of renewable energy. We are a developer of cutting-edge battery technology that allows for a truly off-grid, 100% renewable powered infrastructure, including a data center, which is why I'm here today, is to talk about that sustainable data center infrastructure.
Fabulous. Well, I would love to learn a bit more from Joe and Jennifer about the attributes or the pillars of your sustainability programs, and perhaps a little bit about the successes and challenges as well. Can we start with you, Joe?
Yeah, sure. So when I joined Google back in 2008, we were already carbon neutral. So we've been carbon neutral since 2007, but that was just the kind of the tip of the iceberg. Because then we made a commitment to run on renewable energy. So in 2017, we achieved 100% match of hour for hour, for every kilowatt hour of electricity we use, we have purchased a matching kilowatt hour of renewable energy. So now we have a portfolio of over 7 gigawatts of renewable energy projects. And so we're matched 100%, but that doesn't mean you're matched hour for hour. So this gets into one of our biggest public commitments, which is 7 by 24 carbon-free energy by 2030. And then our water sustainability is the second pillar, which is sustainable water use, and to not damage irreparably any watershed we operate in, and to replenish 120% of anything that we consume. And then the third pillar is around circular economy, and this is really about remanufacturing servers, reselling used equipment, and driving sustainability throughout our entire value chain, because we have also committed publicly to be 100% zero net carbon, and our public commitment is that by 2030 we will achieve net carbon of 50% of our 2019 baseline. And so we're really trying to take a very holistic view of this, and I think that the teams have done a remarkable job so far in each of those areas. one of the things that I'm very proud of is that so far with our carbon-free energy commitment, we've achieved 68% hour for hour in every region that we operate around the world. That next 1/3 is going to be really tough, though.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure is really a newer part of Oracle, and Oracle's historically a software company, so we've been, building this digital infrastructure platform with, I guess, people that don't understand the environmental impact of data centers. And now, I'm growing a team to really think about, what does 100% renewable mean, and 24/7 is where it's at. We don't have that commitment yet, but obviously I'm aware that that's important for our sector. We are a large buyer of co-location data center services at Oracle. Supply chain, managing those vendors, making sure that we work with leaders across the space is really important to us. So we'll be holding those suppliers more accountable on renewables, on carbon reduction, on water, on PUE, and looking for new opportunities such as what Joley is working on battery storage. What are those providers able to offer us in terms of innovation and energy transition? So a lot of exciting work to be done at Oracle.
And I'll just ad-lib this one, but a lot of discussion in the industry about transparency and to what level within the supply chain for carbon. Any reflections or thoughts that you would share on that as well? So this is an area that we as an industry are going to have to work together to unfurl or gain better transparency. I'll ask both of you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that transparency is, it's critical. I mean, shareholders are mandating it. Our customers are coming to us and asking for us to help them meet their ESG objectives, and that includes all the way through our value chain, because as you know, our supply chain, their scope 1 and 2 is our scope 3. Mm-hmm. And so the more that we can enable them to offset or to run on carbon-free energy, then it really does help our scope 3 as well. And that's going to be a really big challenge, is to tackle that scope 3 throughout the entire value chain. But I think that, the transparency, we've been reporting to the Carbon Disclosure Program for many, many years. We achieve the A-list rating, for several years in a row now, which sets, very small % of the companies that report and are graded achieve that A rating. So, that transparency is super important to, like I said, shareholders and customers. And we also allow our cloud customers to have visibility into the carbon content of the grid in the different cloud regions, so they can make informed decisions of where they want to run their infrastructure in which region, if they want to pursue that to help achieve their own sustainability objectives.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I think transparency is, having good data is the #1 request, I think, as a sustainability practitioner, both for our own customers, but also from our suppliers, our vendors. And we see some really good high performers, and then we have a long tail of companies that are slower movers. At both companies, both Equinix and Oracle, it's a similar story where we're trying to bring those laggards along. I'm sure Google's doing the same, but also preferentially work with companies that can help us meet those transparency and data goals that we have, so that we can give the customers the information they need. Obviously, I'm new at Oracle. We're a little bit further behind Google in terms of developing carbon dashboards for customers, but it's probably the #1 request I get is, how do my applications, how do the things I'm running on Oracle, how does that translate into carbon? And we put regional information out there in the public domain right now, but obviously my goal would be to get much more granular over time, the longer I'm at Oracle, build out those products for customers.
Fabulous. Now, Jonathan, we've heard both Jennifer and Joe refer to various stakeholders, from investors to customers across the financial markets. Can you share with us some of the recent mandates that you're seeing emerge, and how sustainability features and where investors are deploying capital as well?
Yeah, so more and more of investment capital, the charter includes an ESG mandate, and then in some cases it's specifically an E mandate, as in just the environmental piece. But roughly $1.3 trillion in assets under management are in dedicated sustainable equity fund products across the globe. And if you look at just the environmental themes, that there's $250 billion of that that's specifically focused on the E portion. Another aspect is fundraising and capital raising, bond issuances. So Jennifer Ruch was involved in this when she was at Equinix. Digital Realty has done this as well, where you can raise hundreds of millions of dollars in green bonds, get favorable financing, and the condition, of course, is that you have to be making high impact investments, PPAs, or investing in renewable energy sources. So it's becoming more and more common to raise green financing. And then it's becoming a much more important part of the mandate of institutional investors. That 1.3 trillion, by the way, doesn't include the private side of things. So the financial sponsors that are backing some of these emerging global platforms also are facing pressure and encouragement from their limited partners to pursue investments that are environmentally responsible.
Thank you. And Joley, to round us out from a slightly different perspective, driving innovation into the field, and I know your customers are broader than the data center sector, but can you share with us, in general, some of the attributes that your partners or customers are seeking your support on?
Yeah, so the main thing is a turnkey solution that provides a full sustainability offering as quickly as possible. So we get customers coming in now that say, we don't want anything unless it's 100% renewable, and how quickly can you get us up and running? And I think we do a lot of that legwork for them on the ESG side of their business, right? When you look at the supply chain, we've done all that vetting, we've rated them, they know what they're getting as they go into it for a turnkey solution. And I think that's the biggest attribute, is somebody that can come in and provide that total offering of real estate, energy, meeting all the ESG requirements, from water to energy to circular economy.
Fabulous. And this is probably a good point to actually talk a little bit about innovation and what are the tipping points for adoption. So I think first project sort of coming out of the ground, but maybe we can talk about that. I have several people on the panel that have experience with R&D, and what are the attributes that take a new piece of innovation and make that scalable and adoptable. But Joley, can we start with you?
Sure.
And then Joe, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah. So the main attribute that we've always needed to start with was the technology being ready to be deployed into the market, but secondarily the bankability of it, which John's talking about, the green bonds and other capital enablement that allows for these projects to get off the ground. If the technology is there, the customer is there, the demand is there, capital enablement is a really important factor in getting these moving.
Fabulous. Joe, any thoughts from you? I know we were talking stories about early innovation, and what are the keys, sort of the barriers and the keys to landing innovation and driving that adoption for new technologies?
There's a ton of innovation going on throughout the entire supply chain, which I'm really delighted to see, whether it's immersion cooling, which obviously has a lot of potential to help us be as energy efficient as possible, or new building materials and new type of building technologies that help to try and achieve a zero net carbon shell. Mm-hmm. We forget about that, but if you do some research, the cement industry, if it were a country by itself, would rank in the top 10 greenhouse gas polluters in the world, just the cement industry. And you add the steel industry on top of that, that makes up a total of something near 16% of all the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from those two. Steel and concrete and cement are in every, basically, large-scale building. So there's a lot of innovation on replacing concrete with other materials. We talked about, some companies that are pursuing that. There's a lot of push to use maybe mass timber as a replacement for steel. So I think it's early days, and I'm very bullish on the new technologies that are going to come out that will help enable that building shell. Then it's our job to work with the equipment vendors to drive down the carbon intensity in the equipment that we buy that goes into the data centers, and to have full transparency around that. One of the initiatives, as you know, is the Infrastructure Mason's Climate Accord, which is all about that transparency and how do we certify what the embedded carbon is in all of the equipment, the value chain that goes into building these, this digital infrastructure. So I think there's a lot of great innovation.
Yeah, and that's a good pro tip on some of those basic civils building materials as well. Any comments from John or Jen on that topic?
I would echo more broadly liquid cooling, which I think is becoming more and more common. And then another aspect would be just simply operating at a higher temperature set point. So turning the thermostat up. The ASHRAE standards do allow data halls to operate at higher temperatures than what's commonly the case. 22, 24 degrees centigrade could be upped by a few degrees, or 72 degrees could go to as high as mid 70s in a multi-tenant environment. And then, as I think a lot of you know, when the hyperscalers build and operate their own sites, they're far above that. But there could be more of that perhaps in the going forward among multi-tenant developers.
I guess I would add, on the innovation side of things, the flip side, the challenge with innovation is, with carbon accounting, it's fuzzy. It's hard to, there's not a standard for whole building life cycle analysis, for example, on things like cement and steel. And so even when Equinix, when I was there, we conducted several whole building life cycle analyses on building materials, but it's hard to get the bill of sale and to get that level of data that you need to actually be able to make a carbon reduction claim. So, I think there's more industry collaboration that needs to happen on, like the iMasons Accord, to standardize how companies are measuring these improvements, so that we can kind of all be speaking in the same language and reporting the same numbers. At the same time, working with vendors, that are giving us, lower carbon products, of course. But that's kind of the flip side. That innovation's great, but you also need to be able to measure progress.
Yeah, fantastic. And it looks like we have maybe 4 minutes free to take some questions from the audience as well. Please. And we might actually, I think we have folks with a mic. Yeah. Yes, there you go. Great.
Hi. Okay. Yeah, let's go back 1 year. 1 year ago, the Super Bowl was dominated by ads touting crypto and its most unsustainable activity, Bitcoin mining, that fell precipitously in value, not to mention the FTX collapse. The war in Ukraine had not yet started, with the attack on Nord Stream 2 signifying the vulnerability of submarine cables worldwide. So my question for the panel is sustainability compatible with security?
Wow, I think that's a really interesting
There's a lot
question.
to unpack there.
There is, my goodness, and good context setting. The world is changing and it's a volatile environment. So how do you offset that reliability or energy security with sustainability? I personally think they go hand in hand, but I would welcome if there's anyone that would like to have a go at that to start with.
So from my perspective, I absolutely do think that that sustainability and security are not they're not opposed to each other. I think that the more independent that we can become through modernizing the grid, one of the biggest problems with bringing more renewables onto the grid, at least in the United States, is the transmission capacity. Our grid has not been modernized enough to support that. And it's, the drive to electrification of almost everything, it's going to put more and more tax on that grid transmission. So I think that from a government policy perspective, those are the types of advancements and investments that we really need to make to help drive that security, which will enable us to be more energy independent and more sustainable as well. I don't think that there's one silver bullet. It's not just wind or all solar. It's going to be a combination of many things, including grid level energy storage, including nature-based carbon removal technologies, and lots of things. I think it's undeniable that we are going to exceed 1.5 degrees C globally. That's pretty well conclusive at this point. I wish we had more time. We just simply don't. So we have to keep doing as much and as quickly as possible to combat the really, really devastating effects of going above 2 degrees C on a global basis.
Yeah.
I think that energy security and sustainability actually go hand in hand. And I think that by creating distributed energy microgrids, you create a physical barrier and security that doesn't exist today, that allows for modernization of the grid and allows us to move to a more energy secure environment.
Yeah, well put. Great, I can see another question, please.
Yeah, this is my favorite question, but this is such a distinguished panel. I don't understand the logic of being concerned about data centers using 3% of electricity use globally. And the reason is, for the same reason that you wouldn't begrudge spending $2 for a known winning Powerball ticket, the fact that data centers and networks help both lower carbon emissions through substitution effects like video conferencing rather than jet travel, as well as optimization of resource use. Take UPS Orion optimizing trucks. It seems like every dollar or metric ton spent on data centers has a much better positive payoff. So what exactly is the issue, and is it a perception issue or a real issue?
I think that's well put, and I know Jennifer has a view, and Jonathan as well. Please go ahead, Jonathan.
So,
Yep.
and maybe just to pile on, it's like blaming a Prius driver for
Yeah.
polluting. I have to give credit to John Chaputis for that analogy, but I think it's perception. And if you look at what happened in Amsterdam with their moratorium, it was policymakers that were inadequately educated about the industry and about some of the facts that you mentioned. And so in every country it could be a little bit different, but data centers ostensibly are a target, but once there's more information that's imparted to policymakers and regulators about the fact that they are inherently a more efficient way to consume IT, I think that's something the industry is going to continue to have to be challenged by and hopefully continue to communicate.
Thank you for your question. And Jennifer, we were talking about telling the story about the benefits of the industry, some of the healthcare benefits, being able to work remote or education remote during a pandemic, some of the revolutions, the utilization of AI to help progress society and corporates and governments, et cetera. So telling the story and the trade-offs with some of the negative views around sustainability.
Yeah, it's more than just a 3% energy story. It's also a 12 times data, I believe. The IEA, the International Energy Agency, says that for an additional 1% energy usage, we got 12x data across our data transmission networks and data centers. So it's this, I think the industry in general, and this is why the EU Data Center Association was formed, why the DCC in Virginia, the Data Center Coalition was formed, is to help kind of consolidate our sector's messaging around the economic benefits that we bring, as well as all the ancillary benefits to, healthcare, IT, logistics, like R&D. Every sector is improving and becoming more efficient because of what we offer the world.
Thank you for your question.
I know that we're
please.
tight on
go
time,
for
but I
it.
think it's a really, really good question.
Yeah.
And I think that the world realized exactly the benefit of digital infrastructure with the pandemic. When people were forced into isolation, we still communicated with each other. We still did business to business and business to consumer commerce. We still enabled trillions of dollars of economic activity when the world could not meet face to face any longer. Countries were isolated from each other. It was not ideal. It was certainly suboptimal, but we still managed. And all of that was on the back of this digital infrastructure. And I think we have an awareness problem because not all industries are created equal. I think this industry has been very responsible. We need to do more, for sure. I'm not saying that we can declare success, but I do think we have an awareness problem. Legislators don't understand what the industry is already doing. The general public doesn't understand. They just see more and more data centers in some of the large areas. If you look at Northern Virginia, where it's just constantly expanding, and people are worried. They're saying, this is encroaching on my residential area. It's encroaching in our schools. And this is what I think the I don't want to say panic, but the concern is around. And so we need to do a lot better job of evangelizing what the industry is doing to combat this.
Thank you for your question. And we'll do a really quick closing remarks, and this is where the choose your own adventure part. So 2 questions that are top of mind. we brought up all of the stakeholders in the ecosystems, from legislators to our sector advocates driving sustainability initiatives. Where can we make the highest impact on change? And then part two is, please share something that you're proud of that your teams are working on or have delivered to help progress sustainability as well. We'll start with you, Joe, and work along the panel.
I think the highest impact on change is really enabling people to make more informed decisions, whether it's Google Maps, like highlighting the lowest greenhouse gas route to take, or Google funding sustainable startup companies to give them a leg up and help them advance their technologies. Those, I think, are really important things that we need to continue to do more and more of. Working in healthcare, as we talked about earlier, it's super important to bring this digital infrastructure to help modernize the tools available. And just to brag a little bit on the team, I will say that I would have never guessed that we would have achieved already over 2/3 24 hours, hour for hour carbon-free energy in this short period of time. So to all of the teams in my energy group, I just want to say you're awesome.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I guess I think the challenge is going to be to continue to collaborate to make sure that sustainability is an open dialogue, right? Because we all need to improve together. One of the things I did at Equinix that didn't exist when I started was really to open that book of, where are our most sustainable locations, putting that information out there for customers in an easily digestible way. I want to do the same for Oracle to make sure that all of our cloud regions, you can make more informed decisions about carbon. And then internally, I'm going to work, right, to increase our investment across our renewable energy projects and carbon reduction and efficiency efforts. So I'm really excited to keep working across the sector. And while I'm really new at Oracle, I think there's a lot of wins we're going to get together, by continuing to collaborate.
I think to make progress, it's important to have a scorecard, a common scorecard, so you can measure the progress that you're making. And if you're a developer or a hyperscaler, reporting 4 key metrics that would be carbon intensity, renewables mix, PUE, and WUE. If you focus just on those 4 and give stakeholders every couple of years a sense as to what progress you're making, even if you don't want to disclose the actual number, I think that's a step forward, having a common scorecard.
I think standardization and technology coming together with public policy and finance is the biggest impact we can make. And I think those things are there and they're happening. We saw a lot of them happen in the last year. I think you had a secondary question about what we're most excited about. I'm most excited about building the largest independent renewable energy power plant in the country, 125 megawatts, as well as a Redux flow battery technology that would allow the end user to have 5 days of power without any additional generating source. So I'm excited about technology and services that we've developed at the Sun Company.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for your perspectives. Thank you for the wonderful questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh.